our Plum School Board. How many of you have ever heard of Plum? Plum School Board, now I'm in my 17th year. And kind of an interesting story how I got involved in public education. Sounds really strange, but it was through a homeless person. For a number of years, I've shared, probably over 20 years, I've shared down at the Light of Life mission in the mornings. I go down one morning a week. And at the end of this one particular session, a gentleman just stood there, just staring at me. And he said that he wanted to speak to me. So I said, sure, that'd be great. But I said, could you do me a favor? One thing that I always like to try to do is to shake everyone's hand as they're going back to get their breakfast. And I said, as soon as I'm done, I said, I'll be happy to speak with you. And then when the time came, I said to him, how may I help you? And he said, well, I just have to tell you, just an observation. He said, this is a pretty tough crowd to be able to speak to. And he said, when you come here, he said, everybody stops what they're doing and they listen very, very intently. And I said, oh, thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. He said, but I didn't mean it as a compliment. Well, I had no idea what he was talking about. I said, well, okay. And he said, well, let me just tell you, if you really believe the things you say, you'll use that gifting to make a difference. Well, I had no idea what that meant, but I was haunted by that, actually. I came home from work that day, and typically that would be how I'd start my Fridays. Again, this is maybe 20, 22 years ago. And when I would come home, I would tell Lucy what I spoke about. That's my wife. I'd tell her what I spoke about. And on this particular day, how did everything go at work? Good. How did everything go at the mission? Good. But kind of strange, honey. And then I told her this story about this fellow laying this on me, that I was to use this to make a difference. Well, about 6 months later, I understand what this, it finally started to make sense what this guy was saying, because I was asked to run for the school board. And that's exactly how I was approached. We believe that you have giftings, and we believe that you can make a difference. Well, I'm here this morning to just reinforce that with each and every one of you here today. What a privilege it is to be able to share and to be able to really speak from my heart and hopefully just encourage you in a way that this year will be different than any other year that you've had in your career. Because this is the year that you're going to reach the level that you have the potential to reach. You know, one of the things that I always like to say is that I have two boys. I'm going to be telling you a story about my older son here in a moment, but I never compare the two boys. They're both very gifted athletes, gifted students, and a lot of times people say, well, which one do you think is further along in the process? You know what? I don't even want to care. I don't even want to mention that, because they're different. I only compare them to themselves. And likewise, today, as you listen to what I have to share, I'd like you to think of it as it relates to you and what your potential is. Now, in our school district, we have what's referred to as the President's Council of Physical Fitness. And this goes back quite a ways, because my son now is a senior in college. But when he was in 3rd grade, this was the first that our students in our district are tested. About 5 different areas that they're tested on, one of them being the mile run. And so on this particular day when I came home from work, Lucy said, you're going to need to speak to Eric because he's a little bit disappointed about something that happened in school today. So I went over, he was sitting on the sofa, and I went over, I put my arm around him, I said, how you doing, buddy? He said, oh, pretty good, Dad. And I said, well, how did everything go at school today? And he said, well, not so well. Well, what happened? He said, well, we began our practice for the President's Council of Physical Fitness. That sounded innocuous enough, and I said, well, okay, good. And so how'd it go? And he said, well, not so well, Dad. He said, we started practicing the mile run. Okay. But I didn't do very well, Dad. Well, hey, buddy, you know, we haven't practiced this, and you're a little guy, and it's understandable that you wouldn't be at your top form. And he just looked right into my eyes, and he said, but Dad, some of the girls beat me. I said, oh, I understand now, son. Okay, I got a beat on this now. Now, I wish I could tell you that I've imparted all of this great wisdom to my sons, but the truth is, I've learned a whole lot more in the process. Those of you that are parents, raise your hand if you've learned a whole lot more in the process coming back. How about it? Well, boy, that sure was the case in this instance for me. And I've always loved these life lesson opportunities. So just real as a matter of fact, I said to him, you know what, buddy, this is what I call a fork in the road. A fork in the road, by definition, is when straight ahead is no longer an option. You know, we get real comfortable going right or going left, but there are a lot of times in life that we come to that fork in the road. Straight ahead is no longer an option. You know what I'm talking about with the PSSAs, with all of the government mandates, with the lack of funding. It's a moving target that we shoot at. It really, truly is. The budget that we have now, when I started on the school board back in 1991, the state was underwriting almost 50% of our budget. The last budget, about 34%. That's money that we have to go back into the community to try to recover, try to get. The discipline, all the different kind of issues, virtually every issue, the technology. Oh my gosh, the technology is absolutely crazy. What we have the potential now to teach our young students. And it's just so totally different. It's a moving target that we shoot at. It too is a fork in the road. And those of you that have been teaching for a number of years, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because it's a different standard, it's a different goal. Everything that we're doing is practically different. Well, so it was with Eric, and I said to him, I said, you know what, buddy, this is a wonderful opportunity. I said, you have two options. When you get to those forks in the road in life, I said, you have two options. And I want you to tell you, I'm going to love you the same either way. It's your choice. Now, option number one, we can just assume that you've just not been blessed as a runner, that that's not one of your skills. I'll love you just the same, and we'll just move on. We'll do other things. We'll try to progress in other areas. I said, but the other option that you have is I will commit with you to try to improve it. We'll take a look at your mechanics, first of all, try to perfect your mechanics. In fact, I'll tell you what I'll do, Eric. We had one of those big video cameras. You remember the first generation of video camera? I had one of these big video cameras, and I said, I'll tell you what, after supper tonight, we live just a few blocks from the school, I'll go up to the school with you, we'll videotape your running, we'll try to look at your mechanics, and then every night that you wish to practice, I'll go up there with you. Now, which option do you choose? Well, he didn't even hesitate. He said, Dad, I'd like to improve. I'd like to be better on this thing. I said, good choice, buddy. So that very first night, went up to the school, had the video camera, and I discovered one of the problems. I guess the fact that they had to run 5 times around the track scared him, because he had pretty good form just running around the house and running around the yard and the playing that a little boy would do. But when he got on that track, I don't know, maybe he saw somebody run like this, but his arms and legs are just flailing all over the place. So I said, whoa, 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 buddy. In fact, I called him Flipper, because the arms and the legs were just going incongruently all over the place. I said, buddy, elbows in, hands up. Elbows in, hands up. And you know what, right now, he's about 6'4", almost 6'5". He's pitching Division I baseball, a gifted athlete, that if he came into the back, into that door there, and I said, hey, Eric, elbows in and hands up, he'd get a big smile on his face because he heard that 10,000 times when he was growing up. But every single day, committed to that task of trying to improve one step at a time. It was absolutely unbelievable to see the metamorphosis, the transformation of this little boy in 3rd grade setting out to that goal. There would be days that I would have a school board meeting, maybe working late, and I'd have a late supper. You know, one of those, you have that sort of a thing, and you're having a 9 o'clock supper. At that 9 o'clock supper, this dear little boy would have a watch that we got him for Christmas the year before, a stopwatch, one of those Casios, and he'd be so proud. A little note here to me, Dad, I shaved another 3 seconds off today. He'd have his mom go up to the school with him. Every single day I fixed to that goal. I'm a real believer in doing the little things well, and as I looked at this situation with Eric, and I've just seen him grow so much in his life, and all of the things that he's been able to accomplish, but it's been the same principle of just doing those little things well, of fixing your eyes to a task, and then moving through. Each and every day, shaving that little teeny bit, that 1 second here, that 2 second there. To me, that is what success is all about. Goal setting, and this is one of the things that I've said so often all throughout the time that my boys have been growing up. Preparation is a prelude to results. I want to repeat that. Preparation is a prelude to results. Now, I want you to understand, I'm not speaking to you on a high horse. Please forgive me if it sounds as though I am. Because for the most part, up until I would have been about 25 years of age, my organization and planning meant that I didn't have to miss the bus that would take us from the hotel out to the ballpark. Okay? 3:30. My calendar, if you looked at my appointment calendar, would have had a big 3:30 on it, and that's when I had to be out in front of the hotel to get my ride out to the ballpark. So when I got into the real world and I got my first job, oh, wow, what a culture shock. I had a Volare, a company car, a white Volare. It was a woman that had the car and had chosen the color scheme, baby blue interior. Now, it was an older car, and I would pile it with all of my junk, and we lived on a hill, and when I would get to the bottom of that hill, if I would have to stop, it would rain these displays and the stuff that I had in the back seat. Well, big day for me. I was getting a new company car at Yates Motors in Indiana. So I had to take all of the junk out of the car. Most of it, I wasn't even aware of exactly what inventory I had. But I put all of this junk at the end of our driveway. We had a townhouse that we lived in, didn't have a garage. So I had to put this big pile of junk. It reminded me of the time when I was in second grade. My mother came to the school to help me pack to get my stuff, you know, the last day of school. And we found my apple turkey Thanksgiving, remember? And this mushy kind of thing was down at the bottom of all of this stuff. Well, it was the same sort of a deal. But you know what? Necessity is the mother of invention. And I made a commitment that I was working much harder than I had to because I didn't plan the success that I was hoping for. I didn't really have goals. And so what I did is I broke down, in that particular job as a sales representative, I broke down, I got a performance evaluation. And I looked at what I called the score buttons, the things that I was supposed to achieve. In order to get the top rating, these were the things that I needed to achieve. And I went down through, and again, this is before computers. I took a blank sheet of paper, and I just drew a little grid, and I put all of these areas of accountability. And then I looked at what I needed to accomplish within that year, and I put the number way out in here. And in order to accomplish this number in the year, then this is what I would have to accomplish within the month. And in order to accomplish that in the month, this is what I need to accomplish in the week. And then this is what I needed to accomplish in the day. And all of a sudden, that goal of getting up 1,200 posters by next year's evaluation boiled down to getting 5 posters up today. All of a sudden, not so difficult. All of a sudden, well within my reach, well within my goals, because I was able to see everything in a very linear, very forthright fashion. Preparation is a prelude to results. What success are you planning for? As you begin this school year today, literally, what goals have you set for yourself? It's real easy just to fall into that routine and just to mail it in. And just to come to work and just say, well, it's another year, and only the names have been changed to protect the innocent. But no, this year, I'm going to get that fire back under my feet. And I am going to do everything that I possibly can to set those goals that I know that I need to achieve. And again, this is a very difficult task to do because it's a moving target that we shoot at. But I am going to make that commitment that each and every day I'm going to move directly toward those goals. You know, goal setting, my older son is at Charleston Southern University, and they had a decent year this year. But they have a new coach, actually, and a new coaching staff. And one of the things that Eric and I have talked an awful lot about is the reason that their team didn't do better than what they were projecting. And they did all the goal setting, and they had the team meetings last fall and laid everything out that they hoped to accomplish. But the one fundamental point that they missed was, how are we going to do it? What steps are we going to take? Okay, if this is the goal that we hope to achieve, and sure, it's great to dream. Well, what steps am I going to take between now and then to be able to achieve that? See, my firm conviction is that most of us live in a pop quiz world. You know what I mean by that? A pop quiz world is when every single thing surprises us. You get up in the morning, it's like, oh, darn, that's due today, isn't it? Oh, that's today. Instead of being proactive, and the example that I use with my boys, I tell them at the beginning of a school year, just imagine, you know that project, that year-end project that'll be due next May? Just imagine if you began working on it right now and just taking little steps each and every day toward that goal. It would be so good that in May, they'd publish the thing. Now, meanwhile, what is the routine typically? The routine typically is you start to take this thing seriously about April. Oh, that's right. And then in May, you take it real seriously, and that last week out, you're working until 11 o'clock each night trying to finish this off. Is that going to be your best effort? Of course not. Preparation is a prelude to results. Another very important aspect, I believe, to the work that we do, and in many respects unique work that we do in public education, is that we need to expect the best. Now, if you've ever gotten a communication from me, from an email, a letter, a thank you note, whatever, my salutation at the end, my closing at the end, is expecting the best. Because I believe that with all my heart. I don't do something without expecting the best. When I come into a situation, I come in here today believing that this is going to be a day of action. This is going to be a day where as a group we plan and prepare, and that this is going to be a better year in this district because of this day. I expect the very best. I expect the best of myself coming into here. I expect the very, very best of you. Now, I'm not a real expert on Greek mythology, but I understand in the story of Pygmalion, that's exactly what it is, that the gentleman's feelings about this statue that had been created of this beautiful woman, his feelings were so intense that it literally brought this statue to life. Can you imagine if you had that kind of enthusiasm about the students that you'll be teaching, about the teachers that you'll be working with, about your peers? Can you imagine if we had that kind of enthusiasm and that kind of a goal setting, that literally it would just bring someone to life? My son, my younger son, was drafted by Pittsburgh in June, but has chosen to take his scholarship at the University of Oregon. And one of the things, and I mean this is something that he really labored over. Here's an 18-year-old kid with a pretty hard decision to make, because I have to say, right after the draft, that turns your head. That at 18 years of age, you can have a payday right then and there. But you know ultimately why he chose to go to school? Because of the teachers he respected and admired. And he said, you know what, Dad? He said, when it comes right down to it, he said, the baseball will be there. God willing, I'm going to get drafted again out of college. But I'll be bigger, I'll be stronger, I'll be better. And just as important, I'm going to be more prepared for life. What a compliment to the teachers that taught him over the 13 years that he was in school. How important that is, that we expect the best. I had many privileges. It was mentioned that I had been the host of the Sports Week television program. And I had the privilege of meeting some very, very interesting people, famous people, some of the greatest athletes in the history of sports. One of the gentlemen that I had an opportunity to meet and found very, very interesting was a gentleman by the name of Y.A. Now, I first of all have to ask, how many of you remember the name Y.A. Tittle? He was a great quarterback in the 50s and 60s, San Francisco and New York. Well, we did a show, I believe at Robert Morris University, and then we took him back to the hotel. So on the ride back to the hotel, I'm asking him a million questions because I just found it fascinating. He's probably at that time maybe 75 years old. And he said something that really struck me. And I had to turn around actually to look at his face to believe what he was saying was true. I said to him, I made some sort of a comment. I said, well, I'll bet you had a great deal of concentration. And he said, you know, it's funny, Tommy. He said, really, I didn't. He said, if the truth be known, he said, I was a dreamer. And he said, I'm not exaggerating to say that as I would be coming out of the huddle, he said it was like as if I was looking into the future. And he said, I would just see that wide receiver going and following the pattern, and I'd see this perfect spiral pass going right into his hands. So he said, I really dreamed. He said, I never really concentrated in the traditional sense. And I said, I didn't want to correct him, but I said, you know what, in the literal sense, Mr. Tittle, that is the highest form of concentration. When you actually see the result that you want to achieve, it's called overlearning. And if you want to do some interesting reading, do a Google search on overlearning. Because what it means is that you have an intensity in your focus to such a point that you actually literally see it happen. Expect the best. You know what, this is going to be a great year. The grouping of students that you're going to have is unique. And even though it might be some younger brothers and sisters of students that you've had in the past, maybe even some children of some students that you've had in the past. I was in some different schools where there were grandchildren of some of the students that some of the teachers had originally had. But you know what? No matter what it is, each and every one of these students is unique. And what a wonderful opportunity you will have to draw out the very, very best potential in each and every one of these students. I think another key I think it's human nature to always look one step ahead. My wife and I will be married 29 years at Christmas time. And I believe one of the things that we've been blessed to do well is to appreciate the present. And that's what I mean by grow where you're planted. I think human nature is to be frustrated. We're always looking ahead. We're always projecting. And mind you, I'm not contradicting what I'm saying about the importance of planning, but I'm saying live in the moment, prepare in the moment, do in the moment to grow where you're planted. In spring training, 1974, I was coming off a very, very good rookie season. I was 6-1 in the Gulf Coast Rookie League and was invited to early spring training. And our spring training at that time was in Tucson, Arizona. Was invited to early spring training and did very, very well. And I was working out with the AA team in San Antonio. Now, I was only 18 years old, but I was working out with the AA team, having a great spring, and just really assumed that I would be bypassing, that I was going to get that promotion over Class A right into AA. I really felt that I had earned that. At the tail end of spring training, they posted the rosters for the different teams. And how disappointed I was that I was only getting a single promotion to Class Single A in Reno in the California League. Well, my mom and dad, and I'm not exaggerating, my mom and dad, I believe every day other than Sunday when you didn't get mail, I believe I got a letter from my mom and dad every single day of the 8 years that I was in professional baseball. It was really incredible. And I remember my mother, that particular day, the day that I found this out, and I was embarrassed. I was just so disappointed because I felt that this was something that I had earned. Well, that day, my mom had ripped a page out of a devotional, I believe something like The Upper Room, and it was just the words, grow where you're planted. Grow where you're planted. You don't look at the grass being greener on the other side. Take advantage of the opportunity you have. And I knew exactly what that meant. In fact, it just was unbelievable to me that my mother would have known this and to send this devotional to me. And how that spoke to me, because that year, 1974, was arguably the best year that I had in professional ball. I had 13 wins. And you know what? The next year, I was in San Antonio. In fact, I was there only about a month, had a no-hitter there, and was up in AAA. By the end of May. So even the little things that I dreamed about, they came true, but it was on a different time frame. So it's a matter of growing where you're planted, taking advantage of this situation. And you know what? Many of you have career goals. So that's a good thing. That's a real positive thing. But don't lose sight of the present, because the time for action is now. Another thing that I think is very, very important to your success, to our success this year, is really believing in what we do. And for me, the question is not if, but the question is how. And one of the examples that I think of, we were doing a show. Do you recognize the name Dusty Baker? Dusty Baker was, at that time, was the National League Manager of the year. He was the manager of the San Francisco Giants. And we were blessed. We did a wonderful show with him. It was right before Labor Day. And he was gracious enough to give us a lot of time. And he basically did a playoff preview for us. And it was just solid gold nuggets, what he was saying. Obviously, as the National League Manager of the Year, he had a great perspective on all of this. And so we were pretty thrilled, had this wonderful show. And the way that we would do the show, we had 3 cameras that we would do. One camera would be on me. One camera would be on our guest, and then we had a roving camera would be the 3rd camera. Well, I don't know why I did this, but we did the taping on a Monday. We were going to air it the following Monday, Labor Day Monday. For some reason, on Thursday, I just wanted to make sure that all 3 sets of the tapes were correct, that they were accurate. So I put the first tape in, it was dusty, it looked beautiful. Looked at the second tape, which was the 2-shot, fabulous. I put the tape in that would have been the camera on me, and it was just nonsensical, squiggly color lines. I thought, well, maybe it's just the machine. I put it into another machine, same thing. Well, long story short, I went around to every one of these DEC Pro machines that Cornerstone Television has. None of them had any sort of a picture. I went downstairs, I talked to one of the engineers, and he said, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, you guys took the wrong camera on Monday. I took the chip out of that camera. There's nothing on that tape. Oh my goodness, now what do? I have this fabulous show, all of these wonderful answers, but basically, I'm not there. So how in the world can you have it would be almost like God was asking the questions of Dusty Baker. So I had a little powwow, brought everybody together, and everybody, oh, can't do it. Wait, hey, we'll have to do it another time. Hey. Whoa, fellas, time out. We are going to do this show. We've already advertised the fact that Dusty Baker is going to be our guest, the National League Manager of the Year from the Western Division champion San Francisco Giants. We're doing this show. The only question is how. How can we do this? Well, what we ended up doing, because we approached it that way and didn't accept failure as an option, the San Francisco Giants were playing all that week. In fact, Thursday they had an afternoon game. This was at Three Rivers Stadium. And so I got permission to go down after the Thursday ball game because the Giants were going to be going out of town, Pirates were going to be going out of town, the Steelers were going to be playing a game that Sunday at Three Rivers Stadium. So I got permission to go down, and what I'm going to do, I had my questions. I'm going to re-ask those questions, and everything was exactly the same. It was exactly the same time frame that I would have done the show on Monday. And so we went through and I asked the questions. I had one of the camera people actually sit in the chair so that I had something to look at as I'm asking these questions. We had one hurdle that we had to overcome because the minute that the game was over, there were crews out there that were sandblasting or water blasting the lines from the baseball field off. So when Dusty was actually doing the original show on Monday, you could have heard a pin drop at Three Rivers Stadium because there was nobody there. Now all of a sudden we have crews, and you know when the trucks back up, beep, 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 and all of this sound and everything. So what we did, again, not wanting to accept failure as an option, we worked very, very carefully, and this was really cool. We looped the sound. We just recorded the ambient sound, and then we laid that underneath Dusty. So even though it wasn't there when Dusty answered those questions on Monday, it was there when we put the finished product together. And when you saw this show, it was one of the most unbelievable things because to me, to see what a little bit of creativity and a lot of perseverance can do, this show actually came off perfectly, even though he was answering questions that I was asking 3 days later. It's not a question of if, it's a question of how. You have students, and not in the special needs category, but you have students that are waiting for you to unlock their potential. That you are going to make the difference. I'll tell you, for me, I can tell you very specifically. I was in 7th grade, and I never really, as an athlete, I was never really motivated to be my best in school. And I was a good student. I would have been a B student, maybe up to that point. But we had open house, and the teacher that I had for history, Mr. Rose, J.W. Rose, he had my mom and dad. And so he was telling them about how I was a part of this homogeneous group of students, what we would call GATE in our district now, but students with a little bit higher IQ on a course to essentially graduate a year early. We would be taking college courses by the time that we were seniors. I just thought it was coincidental that I was in with other smart students. And when he told my parents this, my parents came home from the open house and they said, "Why didn't you tell us this?" And I said, "Because I didn't know." But the fact that J.W. Rhodes believed in me, it changed the way that I thought of myself as a student. He unlocked something inside of me, and I have to tell you, I made probably a handful of B's. I graduated as a scholar athlete, National Honor Society, academic scholarships in addition to the athletic scholarships that I had coming out of high school. All because this one teacher opened up that possibility to me.